You want to take that one off?
No, I do not.
Couldn't hear that. Could you just
Well, I asked,
say that louder, please?
I asked who CSL Belmar LLC was.
Yes, we heard your question. We didn't hear the answer.
That is the company who purchased the bar police liquor license.
And who was that?
It's the CSL Belmar.
Who is it?
I don't have the application.
You don't know this one. What entity owns it? You know where they would want to use it?
This is just to renew it as an inactive license to be held in process.
But
It's not,
But who owns it? Who is that entity?
It's the owners of TJ's stuff.
Thank you.
Just real quick. There was a public meeting, everything you talked about is on the record, so shout out. So yeah, just for the record, CSL is the same as the owners of DJ, so if anyone is at a conflict, I guess now you would want that removed from the consent agenda. I don't think anyone does here, does. All right, so which ones are moving again? Or do you have any questions on them, or you just want them removed?
No, just remove them. 9, 11, 12, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21.
Okay, I will make a motion to remove them from the consent agenda and go on the paper.
I will second.
Councilmember Beckham?
Yes.
Councilmember Beckham?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Glick?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's go with, no, the resolution. Well, I open up for any public comment on the resolution calendar. Just raise your hand, wait to be called out, and you come up front, just state your name and address.
I don't know if I have the right number.
Well, you can just say
Joan
it.
Corallo, A Street. There's a couple of change order here on these resolutions. For the work that was done, the storage work that was done on 13th Avenue, I mean, is that project completely finished?
Do you know which change order?
Well, there's 3 of them on here, you know, up and
The
down.
13th Avenue water job is now completely done, yes.
That's the sewer infrastructure. But we do have a problem on 13th and A with the new sewers that were put in. I mean, I'm not an engineer, I don't know what they did, but since the new sewers are done, we have more water in our basements and our sump pumps, it's not draining. I have called Mike only once to clean the top of the sewers because of everything accumulating there. I've gone out myself and I've cleaned out the sewers because just the leaves and the water just backs up. So we're not in a better shape having had all of that done. That's why I'm asking, are they completely done?
I'll tell you, there
Has
are,
anybody, I'm sure there's been other neighbors that maybe aren't too happy.
well, I'll tell you this, that there are families throughout town who are complaining about water that they've never had. You know, talking with our engineers, it may be a while before the water table in Belmar settles down.
Well, it's been a couple of months.
It hasn't been a year. It's going to take time. And believe me, there are people who never had water before that, you know, when it rains a little bit, all of a sudden they get water. And we're now going to get some. So I'm not saying it is or isn't a cause of the change to 13. I'm just saying that there are other folks in the same situation.
Just as an example, before the sewers were put in, when we had heavy rain and accumulated water, the people on the west side of the street would come all the way up their lawn and then some. The street was completely flooded. It floods worse. I don't know if it's raining harder, but I'm talking a period of many years. So I'm just questioning, are we done with the job? Maybe somebody needs to revisit something because there's a lot of neighbors that are not happy.
We'll definitely have our engineers take a look at it. Thank you.
I'll be calling to Mike.
Any other public comments, questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am. On the resolution calendar.
Oh,
No. That's, ordinance.
Mike Seebeck, 110 Second Avenue. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I would like to know on this evening, and I hope I get the numbers right, but on tonight's resolution calendar, there are 2 resolutions for the appointment of specials 1 and 2, some 65 odd names. Can someone explain to me why that is on the resolution calendar tonight, the early part of August?
Chief Palmazano? Shout out, Tom.
So when they were appointed, the one will come on the first of the year. So that will appoint now, this will go through the next ones. The ones that we hire midstream, and those are all included.
Have any of these specials been working so far this summer?
Yes,
They have.
yes, they have.
And is the resolution appointing these specials, is there, this their authorization, I guess? The governing body authorizes them and embodies them with the power to do their job by this resolution, is that correct? Okay. I know, I find it, do you know how many of them are currently working?
They look different every week.
But of the 65, are they all currently employed now?
Yes,
And have they been working since the beginning of the summer?
some of them, yes.
Well, the question I have is, shouldn't this have been taken up at the beginning of the summer, when they were first brought on, and shouldn't they have been empowered to do their job at the beginning of the summer?
Well, most of them were, a lot of them just hired out of the academy, and those we should hire in May. So they go into the academy. So all the ones that came out, 35 that came out, that resolution was when we put them in the academy.
But the academy is not, it's not their official capacity, right? This gives them,
Is hiring them, pending the completion of the academy. So they complete the academy, they're hired.
well, then this, okay, so this ordinance is just redundant then? When they're put into the academy, and they graduate from the academy, they're officially officers duly appointed by the governing body of the Borough of Belmar? Okay, just want to get that straight. Second thing is, Mayor Dory, I just want to point out that if you truly want to listen to the 512 people that signed the petition, and for the record, I can tell you that as one of the reprehensible liars, I've been contacted by additional people who didn't have the opportunity to sign, so that's unfortunate. But I strongly suggest that if you truly want to listen to those voters, that you put the vote on the ballot and pass the ordinance and allow the people to decide for themselves what they want for town. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on the resolution calendar? Yes, sir.
Michael Drew, 16th Avenue. Just a question for, thank you, Peter. Through the chair to Councilman Bean, because he seems to be the only one who's done this, and I've kept some kind of record. Is there any reason has to be given for why they withdraw a resolution from the consent resolution? So can he just do it like senatorial courtesy and say, I don't want to have it on there?
Oh, no, it's by consent, so one person.
So can he give a reason? If I ask him for a reason for each one of these, he can give me a reason why I pulled them off?
Before I vote, I usually do. I always do.
Yeah, I meant just why they pulled off, that's all. Just curious. If we went down the line, like 9, 11.
Yeah, every one of you, I will.
Okay, all right. I just want to, thank you.
Belmar, 219 Second Avenue. There's a resolution on going out to bid for the pavilions. I just wanted to ask the council members and the mayor, have you looked at the revised plans of another 14-foot second story? Have they been drawn up? have you, before you decide even to go out to bid, has anyone looked at what 14 feet may look like? And have you ever looked at what the elevation is required by FEMA now to start off with? Because it's changed considerably since Taylor Pavilion was there. And that these elevations are now different, which is going to raise a building much higher and then adding another 14 feet onto it. I just wanted to,
What's the elevation that it starts at? Do we have that relative to the hotel?
18 feet.
Taylor Pavilion, the newly designed Taylor Pavilion will be, so the first floor will be starting at approximately the same height of the old Taylor Pavilion, because if you remember, there were steps up into Taylor previously. And so when you take into account the floodplain levels and the requirements for how high we need to be, on Taylor it works out to roughly the same.
okay. Just so you know, that's not true. There's new elevations that have just come out and you might want to talk to your building department because they've just come out. We're starting at an elevation approximately 12. You add on a 9-foot first floor, a foot for between the first floor and the second floor, and then another 9 feet, and then you have a second floor. So before we vote on this or before we go out to bid, what is the rush to get this moving? I think you see that the Belmar residents are quite unhappy what's going on. November would be a good time to put it to the vote, let them decide, let the people of Belmar decide. There's not a huge rush to get this done. We have space. You talk about meetings. I went to a meeting maybe 12 years ago, I think it was at Sue Pringle's house, where they were talking about really putting a lot of money into the Belmar Elementary School. I think they were talking about a new heating system. And the one thing that got my attention is that everyone said it was so underused by the town. Why isn't more people, if we put more money into our school, we can have more meetings there, we can have, different gatherings there. There's places that we can meet, and to put off such a huge decision, I think would be smart. I hope that you consider this when you're voting on it. I would like for everyone to look at the plans, maybe float a balloon and see how high that's going to look with another additional 14 feet. It wouldn't take much. It would probably take $50 to shoot a helium balloon up there on a string and see how high these buildings are going to be. I think that before we even go out to bid, that reflect on it and see what you're building there. Thank you.
On the resolution calendar?
Can I talk about the pavilion?
Can I go speak?
Well, okay. Bill Young, 303 9th Avenue, also representing Dolores Young, 1702 A Street. As we know, during Hurricane Sandy, a bomb went off on the beach. Blew up the beach, blew up the boardwalk. Now we have a new boardwalk, we have new lights, we have temporary food, beverage, retail, and let's not forget the bathrooms. All street side concessions are open, and Belmar on the boardwalk and oceanfront is back in business. Now it's time to rebuild the permanent buildings on the boardwalk, which we call the pavilions. We need to do it right. Let's build second stories where it is appropriate. I don't have a problem with beer, liquor, wine in any of those buildings. Well, I have the floor. Okay? We need to be progressive. None of this 1950s style thinking. We need progressive buildings. We've come a long way, and now's not the time to stop. I think this, my opinion, this petition is a bad PR campaign. I think it's fake. I think it's about 1950s strategy, Soviet Union thinking, going backwards.
Sit down.
I think it's a group of nice people who are uninformed and people who are being misguided. Again, we need to be forward. And Mayor, you said it, but I'm going to say it my way. I smell jealousy in the progress that you've made from Hurricane Sandy. You were all over
all in the networks nationwide and even on the BBC. You've also said tonight and many times before, it's revenue generation, not taxation. You've done it at the marina, and now you're doing it at the beachfront. You should be applauded. The other day I was speaking to somebody up on the beach, and they were talking about second stories and all this crazy stuff, and it's going to ruin my view. I said, ruin your view? I don't think the Taylor Pavilion is being built on your window. I mean, if your view is going to be blocked and you feel this way, look to the left or look to the right, you'll see the ocean. In closing, it's time for that Irish foxhole. I'm in it with you. I think it's time to get the weapons, and the weapons is the truth. Lead the charge, my leader, and you are a friend of the working man. And let's hear it for these decisions. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Brendan Reed, 109th Avenue. Just regarding regarding the resolution regarding petitions, just a couple of things. One, no one, myself, nor have I seen any information in our building regarding this, or regarding the petition that's going around, or any of that information. And I look at it as a little bit of an insult. We have about 43 units in our building. We will be the ones to be most affected by this. But for some reason, we're tenants, we're second-class citizens or what, but no one has ever made any approaches in our building. No information has ever been distributed, and we would have liked to have that, at least to get, to hear all sides in a democratic process. The second question is, the last gentleman was speaking, there's no urgency about getting the Taylor Pavilion built. I disagree. My wife is very active in the Belmar Women's Club. There are other organizations in this town which have been shuffling from building to building, some at the behest of entrepreneurs like Chris Brandel, who has kindly allowed the Women's Club to be there. So yeah, we definitely need to get action, and as soon as we can, to get a new one of the pavilions that are. And lastly, on that point, I really want to thank you for the comments. You've gone to say that, look, we've gone away from the building at the 8th Avenue Pavilion. I would have had no problem with it, even though that my unit faces the north side. And when we were definitely affected by it, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But I see the amount of compromise, I see the amount of work that has to be done on it. I think this is the best set of proposals we have going forward. And thank you very much for your leadership.
Chris Lamold, 700 South Lake Drive. This is about the pavilions. First I want to commend the town and the mayor for, I don't think this is a referendum so much on what's been done today with regards to the boardwalk. I think it's more of a dialogue around what do we want the town to have going forth. To Bill's point, it's only been 9 months since the storm, and we've done a lot of yeoman's work. It's terrific stuff. I think now it's just, can we take a pause and stop and really look at what are the key priorities in the town? Brian, you mentioned 2 potentially unfunded infrastructure issues with the lakes. You mentioned that FEMA's not guaranteed. The chances are we're going to get FEMA money for that. It's probably pretty slim, right? So that's maybe $2 million of core infrastructure that, and they're not localized issues. The lakes are major stormwater management components for the entire town. So I wouldn't say those are localized issues. It's really a town issue. So I think when we start talking about, funding $7.5 million, and actually in the flyer it only said 7.1 for all 3. When we're talking 7.5 for 2, and we haven't talked about the 3rd building that maybe staved off for a year, which is another $1.2 million, So I think this is all about a dialogue, and I think we're rushing to it. 9 months since the storm, and I think it's just an opportunity for the town to weigh in, take a pause, and say what are the key priorities that we should be focusing on? Infrastructure issues, 2 stories, and as it relates to the costs, I learned a long time ago in business, in God we trust. Everybody else must bring data. I've seen the first thing I've ever heard was the number, which I'm a reasonably bright guy, and whoa. You know, I mean, I'd love to see a pro forma posted on the website. And it's not just about the bond and the payment schedule, it's about, you know, I mean, I'm in commercial real estate, so I mean, I'm sure there's a capital budget every year for the upkeep of these buildings. I'm sure there's 2 stories, is that much more utilities? What's the insurance costs of a building that's in the V zone and 15,000 square feet? All those things should be in a 20-year pro forma that the town should be able to have views on without us just throwing out numbers. And I mean, that's for me, not that I don't believe anybody, without me seeing it in front of me, I can't weigh in on it, so.
Again, everything I mentioned tonight, we'll put it on the website.
Yeah.
You have my email, if you have any questions?
Yeah, but I think it's just the pro forma, because when I heard about some of the costs, you're missing a lot of the stuff. When you have a building for 20 years, there's capital budgets every year to upkeep that. And you have a building that's 150 yards from the beach, you know, that much more is gonna have to go in to keep up that building. So I think it's a much bigger thing, and I think, you know, I think just the transparency of it all would be helpful, you know?
And as I mentioned, all this will be put up on the website for folks to take a look at. Again, just as people follow the math on it. Yes, Sam? Sam?
Sam K, 414 Seventh Daily. I just want to mention I've been coming to council meetings for many years, and I saw Mayor Pringle, who I appreciate, doing the same thing you're doing to get his programs through to the citizens of Belmar. He did a great job, and he believed in what he was doing, and you believe in what you're doing, and you're fighting for what you want, and it's for the betterment of the state. One other thing I'd like to mention. We talk about 2 stories of this building. Has anyone taken a ride from Cedar down to Point Pleasant, Long Branch, and see the heights of the buildings there? Take a look at Asbury Park. There are 2 pavilions there that are beautiful. They're high buildings, right? Is anyone complaining? You can go to Spring Lake. The boardwalk is blocking off the ocean. Just take a look up and down the coast. Now you're saying it's going to have a parking problem. There's a parking problem all through the shore. You know?
So add to it.
So people happen to find their way to place to park. When I see people in front of my house on a Sunday morning and I can't find a place to park, you know what I say? Thank God, the beach is busy. Just continue what you're doing. And again, I want to thank Mayor Pringle for making Belmar a better place to live so that you can continue the work.
David Schnapp, 302 C Street. First of all, I'd like to say that you don't start a dialogue by going on a 45-minute rant against your critics. I'd like to know who in this town you think is against recovery. Really? Who? Anyone want to speak up? No one's against recovery. Maybe we're against no-bid contracts. Maybe we're, for taking a more contemplative view of before we dive into this head first. It doesn't mean we're against recovery. I think that was really not a very classy thing to do. And this is not the first time that people have said that anyone that criticizes anything you do is automatically against recovery. I find that offensive. Now, about the beach badge prices, you were talking. Yes, because you want to finance it with increase in beach badge prices, correct?
Well, that's really the bond.
Okay, I'll bring that point up at the bond then.
Well, there's no public discussion on the bond, so go ahead.
Okay, well, you pointed to the prices that Manasquan charges for their badge prices, and I would like for us to emulate Manasquan because, their town is about the same population as ours, but their municipal budget is significantly lower than ours, isn't it? So maybe we should learn from Manasquan. Next point. No other Jack Bakers has a miniature golf course. I checked really carefully. No other Jack Bakers, no other Chefs International. So if it was such a lucrative business, I think they would have installed them in some of their other locations, and they have a lot of locations, and none of them I checked has a miniature golf course. So they only have it because we forced them to put it in. Brian, all those buildings you mentioned that are very tall, the one that replaced Seacoast, there's at Seacoast Chevrolet, or all those different tall buildings all over town, none of them are blocking the beach, right? They're on Main Street, right? And the ones on Ocean Avenue are on the other side of Ocean Avenue. So they're not blocking anyone's view of the beach from Ocean Avenue.
Could be blocking the residents that are behind them, west of them.
It could be blocking individual residents' properties, but, it is their property, but the property, of Ocean Avenue and beyond is everybody's property, so. Last question here, or two more things I want to mention real quick. The second floor of the Taylor Pavilion, that's gonna house a banquet hall?
Well, it's gonna, think about the old Taylor Pavilion, right, and just take out the columns.
Right, but-
Open air area, so, I know people try to twist and turn this around and say it's gonna be a catering facility, a banquet hall. Look, it's gonna be a place where, it'll be, available for, parties of up to 200 people, much like the old Taylor Pavilion was. And at the same time, you could have other meetings and other things going on downstairs.
How about weddings?
Yeah, we had weddings there last time, sure. We actually performed ceremonies there, wedding ceremonies.
Deb, do you really think, don't you think there's a conflict with the town competing with its own taxpayers? Like, you have the Waterview Pavilion. I imagine they're paying a substantial amount of property tax. And here you are, you're operating a business that doesn't have to pay property tax, right? And it's competing, like if I don't know the owners of the Waterview Pavilion, but if I were them, I would feel really burned right now that my hometown that I'm paying taxes to is, building a building to compete directly against me. They have all kinds of private parties there too and such. So, maybe we ought to.
The Taylor Pavilion beforehand, like you mentioned, hosted weddings and anniversaries and.
Yeah, but this is going to be a much fancier place, much more likely to attract wedding parties, and the old Taylor wasn't really that fancy, for a wedding, the new one's good. But have you spoken to the people at Waterview Pavilion and gotten their take on this, Don't you think that's going to, eat into their business substantially?
Hey! No, let him finish.
All right. Okay, well, I just want to close by saying, yeah, you heard us, and you say you heard us, and, unlike Mr. Young, I put my faith in the people. I don't think that anyone here is any smarter than the people, and I just would wish that you would refrain from attacking people that disagree with you. Thank you.
I'm going to call out people who go around misleading their neighbors. Yeah, Mark.
Mark Fitzgerald, 1902 Surf Avenue. I would just like to, first of all, this is great dialogue for a town to have. I don't think any of the arguments or oppositions is necessarily unhealthy. I do believe mistruths and misinformation is unhealthy. So if we could stay fact-based, that would be extremely important. The height issue, people confuse how many feet above sea level compared to a height of a building. From what I understand, the boardwalk is 8 feet above sea level right now. So if you use that as your guidepost, make sure you're speaking sea level versus the actual height of the building from the ground. Okay. So the point I want to make is we had 4 buildings. We backed off to 3. In listening to what people said, it is now down to 2. With one of those buildings having a controversial second floor. I mean, this is not that big of a deal. Something has to be done here. And the do-nothing approach is not, is not the right decision here. So if this comes down to second floor on Taylor or not, at the end of the day, when you boil it all down, okay, we should see what the delta is between the two, so you know how much you're paying. I also think another bit of misinformation is it was 90% of the structures that previously existed. So it was never 90% of the new construction. So anyway, I just think that this is not a bad thing that's going on, but we do have to come to some consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, sir.
My name is Fred Marziano. I live on 2nd Avenue. Mr. Mayor and council members, first I'd like to thank you so very much for all that you did to put the town back together. We think you did a great job. And so many others have said, this is not about the past. This is about the future and what we do as next steps. So I would like to make these comments to you, please. You say the pavilions may be paid for by FEMA, federal and state grants and beach badge sales, yet you cannot provide an ounce of assurance that any money is a certainty. In fact, we don't even know the cost of your plans, so it's impossible for anyone to make such a statement with any kind of confidence at all. You say the construction costs will be covered by these sources, but are silent about the substantial additional maintenance costs, the huge insurance costs, if you can even get insurance to pay for any damages, the increased utilities costs, the police patrol costs, and all other costs related to maintaining a much larger building on the ocean. These are all extra costs beyond what the beach badge sales in prior years were required to support. You also conveniently omitted reference to the fact that we will also have to fund and pay the $7.5 million bond at some future point, but you make no reference as to how that will be paid. You talk about paying the debt service as interest, but not the ultimate payment at the end. As you said earlier, the beach-based revenue is not guaranteed, and we've not consistently had the surplus to fund this kind of project. You can play games about when and how it's going to be paid, but ultimately, it's got to be paid. Besides, it doesn't matter if it's coming out of the beach utility fund, because this is all one pocket. It's Belmar's pocket. So if you're so confident that the taxpayers will not be paying for any of this, I find it very troubling that your ordinance number 2013-15 that I have in my hand stipulates, and I quote, "The borough shall be obligated to levy taxes upon all the taxable real property within the borough for the payment of the obligations and the interest thereon, without limitation of rate or amount." So if you're so confident that you're going to be able to pay for this without burdening the taxpayers, why is this a part of the stipulation? And council members, I ask you the following. Since a reputable financial advisor would never ask a client to make such a sizable investment without first seeing a certified cost-benefit analysis, how can you possibly ask us to merely take the council's word that it will all work out without financially impacting its citizens? Please give us the courtesy and respect that we deserve as citizens by showing us a pro forma of exactly what this is going to cost in total, not just to build it, but to operate it and maintain it as well, and the revenue that we, the citizens, will be getting in return for our $7.5 million debt commitment. Please, I implore you to let the people decide on what ultimately is done. I'm neither for or against a two-story building. I am for the people making the decision, not a single group of 3 or 4 people or 5 people making this decision on our behalf. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to address, and maybe I wasn't clear 20 years, just like a mortgage, not a installment mortgage, but just like a mortgage, the debt service would include principal and interest. So I apologize if I wasn't clear on that. I just want to make sure I have. As far as the pro forma, yeah, I think it's a, you're right, we'll get that up as well.
Detail pro forma.
Well, I'll get you as detailed as possible, but that's a very reasonable request. We'll get that for you. The other point you you bring up, and I think it's a very good one, is trust. I think that's a great point you make. And I think that the way you can trust your leaders is to look at the past performance. It's a good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. When we got into this mess, this is nothing I've ever dealt with before. It's nothing the town's ever dealt with before. We've had storms before, but nothing like this. This is, I think we can all agree, this is nothing this town has ever seen before. At least that's what people we ended up saying that night said. So when we started this process back in November, when we took out that $20 million bond, we started talking about the boardwalk. There were people who were opposed to it. There were people that said FEMA doesn't give a guarantee. There were people that said moving forward was foolhardy. There were people that said slow down. What are you doing? There were people that said why are we building the boardwalk? So it's our responsibility as the leaders of this community that were duly elected, whether you like that or not, to decide what we think is best. Obviously, I think it's important to listen to the residents, and I think we have done that. But why should residents trust us? I think they should trust us because when we came out of the gate after Sandy, we said we're going to do this bond. I believe it's the largest bond in the history of this town. And I told you at the time, it would be paid for by the beach utility and a mixture with FEMA. FEMA made no guarantees. I told you at the time it was going to be 75%. I said we hoped it would be 90%. And I'll let you know that conversation Conley and I had with the governor's office, they were telling us it's probably going to get 90, but you can't say it publicly. This was back in December. Yeah. So, I think people, when it comes to the financial aspect of this, when it comes to the math, look at what we did with the boardwalk. We didn't delay it, we pushed it quickly. In that case, by pushing it quickly, we actually got it cheaper than other towns because we were able to get the resources and materials before they were. But when you look at how we funded that, and you come to today, and I'm telling you today, FEMA will tell you, they're coming up with 90% of that. That's what we predicted. 0 property tax dollars is going into, or is responsible for building that boardwalk that's up there now. We told you that back then. We proved ourselves. I think that entitles us to a level of trust from the residents as we go forward with these buildings and we say, look, work with us on this. We're going to listen to you. If you want some numbers, if you're not clear about them, if you want more detail, we'll get them for you. But we're asking is don't fight us on it. Work with us on it. We'll listen to you, and we're asking you to have trust and faith in your leaders. And I think that based on our past performance, which wasn't very long ago, we've earned it.
Mayor?
And I think that the trust issue, and I wish I would have brought that up myself, so I appreciate you bringing it up. If you thought we did a good job through the recovery after the storm, if you thought it was right when we were on the boardwalk, work with us on the pavilions. We've heard you, we've scaled it back. Now we ask you to work with us and trust us as to how it's going to get funded. We proved ourselves on the boardwalk, and I'm telling you, we're going to prove ourselves on this.
Mayor, I'm sorry. The day that I found out that we gave no big contracts to somebody your wife works for, my trust level really bottomed out. So that's just for me. That's really funny.
want to get noticed, wear pink and teal.
First of all, council, I'm Larry Reynolds, 201 9th Avenue. Thank you for the modifications. I appreciate it. I think one of the reasons that this petition came about was that the people in Belmar wanted their voice to be heard again. If you think about it, and I'm going to say from experience, my birthday is on October 29th. It wasn't a great birthday. Don't blame it on me. But from that time to this period of time, we had a lot of things that we were told to do and that we had no choice to do. I'm going to name a few if you don't mind. First of all, we were powerless during the storm, that's literally and figuratively. We had no heat for a while. There was no communication because I had AT&T phones, so that was very frustrating. Matter of fact, the only communication I'm going to say that I had was Brian McGovern kayaking down the block on his thing to hand out pamphlets. Okay? I'll always appreciate that, Brian. Then the state police came, okay? And thank God they came. My house was robbed one of the first days that all the coffers were down here. So I appreciate them coming. But it was also a matter of a curfew with them that was forced upon us. It was a matter of the streets being blocked off, okay? It was a matter of carrying ID every place you went. And I'm not crying because everybody in this room went through this. The biggest blow, I think, for me was when wintertime came, we were blocked off from our Ocean Avenue and our ocean. I mean, one of the things that the year-round community people love around here is going to the ocean in the wintertime. That was completely taken care of, away from us, and it was because of the construction, so everybody knew that. Silver Lake, which is still a mess, was taken away from us who walked their dogs around the lake. It was doing that in mud. Finally, the path is back. We appreciate that. But I think finally we said with the pavilions that we were shown, please let us have a say. Please let us have voted this one. You know what? I'm not against two-story, one-story. I can argue both sides of the case. But I really wish that you guys would consider letting everybody in Belmar vote on this one. You've done a masterful job so far. I think it's let us back in the game. Thank you very much.
My name is Robert Forte, 114 8th Avenue, Belmar. I think the dialogue is great. I just have some questions to add to the dialogue, maybe get some answers. You mentioned this is going to be scaled back. Does that mean the buildings are scaled back, or we're just going to go from 3 to 2? Because I'm not clear about that.
Right, so we were looking at building two pavilions. So we got it between 3 to 9. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
So instead of doing 8 and 10, we're going to stay with 10.
So it's not, so the scaling, I'm sorry, the scaling back is then you, instead of 4 buildings, you're going to 2.
Correct.
Okay, so are you going to rebuild the 8th and the 13th Avenue Pavilion?
You know, that'll be something that will be a conversation down the road. I can tell you, you know, our goal is to have Taylor Pavilion back up and running in time for summer of 2014 and have the 10th Ave as well. You know, I think it's a safe assumption to say that we'll have trailers back between.
I mean, eventually, maybe next year or 15.
I don't know. We're gonna have to see what FEMA would allow. You know, again, listening to the residents, I don't think that they want something as large as what we were looking for between 8th and 9th. And again, we listen to the residents, we hear them. So if anything does go there, it would be substantially smaller than what the plan was that came out of the advisory board.
Okay, so that being the case, if you have a bond issue for $7.7,125,000 to to cover 3 buildings. Is that being scaled back to cover 2 buildings?
That wasn't the cover 3 buildings.
That was just for 2?
Correct.
Okay, so then when you eventually, hopefully and eventually you build 13th and 8th, you're gonna have to have another bond issue.
Correct.
Okay. Couple of other questions. The Taylor Pavilion, is that ADA compliant?
Everything will be ADA.
Does that have an elevator? Or
Yes.
Is that gonna have an elevator? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is this CAFRA approved? Is this project CAFRA approved?
CAFRA being... CAFRA approval as long as you rebuild on the same
Footprint, even though it's gonna be higher?
That's the determination by the Department of Environmental Protection.
So the EPA is different than CAFRA, isn't it?
They're sort of the same thing, but it doesn't need capital.
It doesn't need CAFRA, okay. All of these buildings are gonna be built on the same footprint?
Correct.
Correct. And I looked at the plans, and I could see the Taylor Pavilion and the 10th Avenue Pavilion. When I looked at the 8th Avenue Pavilion, which I live a block away, to me, this does not sit on the same footprint.
Like I said, take the 8th Avenue off. We're not gonna...
No, but that's not the point. The point is how, it was stated previously that this was gonna fit into the same footprint. So I'm wondering why this was deviated for this 8th Avenue Pavilion. Why? Because this does not look like it's on the same footprint. So therefore, you'd have to get approval, and you'd have to get CAFRA and everything else.
In that case, we may, but again, we're not looking at it.
So, okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm so sorry, yes. Come on.
Wendy Callahan. I teach in Belmar, and all night all I've heard was trust and honesty and loyalty, and those words describe Joe LaTesta. And I have to tell you that my children went to Belmar, and I knew they were safe because of Joe, because of Maria, because of people that you want in this town, people that we pride ourselves in this town of being loyal to our kids. He is loyal to our children. And it would be a disservice to the children of Belmar, and all of you have children of Belmar, to lose someone like Joe.
Catherine Brown, 16th Avenue. I want to speak for Joe, Officer Joe, because I was there. I was sitting right there, and he was standing right in front of my car at the time.
Kathy's mom?
Yes. And Mr. Camel came down the street. Joe did not cuss him.
Ma'am, we're just talking about the resolution. If you want, there'll be a public comment afterwards. You can discuss whatever you like. But right now,
So I can't tell you the story?
Not right now, because we're talking about I apologize. And I promise to call.
It don't matter.
I promise to call on you as soon as we get to the public portion. But we did it trust me.
It only takes 5 minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute?
1 minute. All right, we'll deviate 1 minute.
Okay, Mr. Camel come down the street and Joe was saying, slow down, school crossing's a stop sign. He didn't, he came across the crossing and he stops. He jumps out of the car and he said, I heard you. You called me an asshole, didn't you? and Officer Joe said, no, I was telling you to slow down, it's a school crossing and it's a stop sign. Oh, yes, you did. You called me an asshole. And I'm well, that's what happened. And I'm going to go take care of you, right? And Officer Joe said, are you threatening me? Well, I'm going over here. I'm going to take care of you for as the beach is concerned. Okay? Yes,
Kevin Fay, 2002, Ocean Avenue, Belmar. I'm wholeheartedly 100% in support of the regarding the pavilion construction. I think it's an excellent idea. It's well thought, well constructed. It's time to move ahead, and it's time to move forward. And compromise has clearly been made. I think we need to do that. Also, I'd like to mention too, as a resident of Ocean Avenue, my family, as many others, was severely impacted by the hurricane. Not only the lady who passed around a petition that I refused to sign, I know many people that are extremely in support of the pavilions. I think it's a phenomenal idea, definitely. In fact, I'm very disappointed the miniature golf course is not being done at this time, because I think it's great for families, it's fabulous for tourism. Once again, I'd like to commend the mayor and council. And as information, with regards to the gentleman that was here a moment ago and mentioned about why he couldn't get to the beach, thank God for the fabulous police department, the public works department, the mayor and council do a phenomenal job keeping the gawkers and looters out of our house.
Will you be running the Belmar Chase this weekend?
Absolutely.
All right, we're still on the resolution calendar, right? And real fast, before the teachers leave, can I just make one quick statement? And I don't want you to feel as though we're not communicating with you, but the issue you bring up and the petition you brought us, believe me, it's worthwhile, we're taking into consideration, but this is a personnel matter within the police department that we're prohibited from discussing publicly. So I don't want you to think that we're not engaging you in a conversation as we are the pavilions, but we're prohibited from speaking about it because it's a personnel matter.
We get it, we're just here to support it, that's all.
This is just on the resolution, right? All right. Okay. We're in pink, you get picked out. Big words.
I wore my glasses. Susan Gerber, 208 Fifth Avenue, and I have the following concerns that hopefully you'll address. The old Taylor Pavilion, you said, had a capacity for 200, you said, previously?
I don't know